Aaron Lewis from Liberty Norfleet here with Tommy Lepore here from Hello everyone, welcome inside the Red Earth Production Studios for another edition of YBMcast powered by Game 7 Baseball, game7baseball.com. The guys are in full swing. The registration is up, getting the tee. Everybody's getting their clubs registered. They got the big to-do. January 7th is the last day for the club discounts. And so if you're a club and you got your club discounts, make sure you get everything taken care of by January 7th. And I believe there's another discount that goes out February 7th. They also have their 3 for 30, 4 for 40, and 5 for 50 on their discounts. Take advantage of that. There's some great stuff. We talked with Scott Bales this week from Ballparks of America. Great conversation with Scott. They're doing some great things. They just got another park down there. Show me. I think it's showmebaseball.com. They're all grass. They're going into the older age groups. With Ballparks of America. So some great information there. And it's right. The backdrop for that ballpark is Lake, was it Taneycomo? I think he said.
Lake Taneycomo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not a bad
There's worse
backdrop.
places to go.
Yeah, right. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, a lot of good stuff happening around the state, some great venues. So check out game7baseball.com. Today, we've got our prep baseball talk. We're back today talking about the PBR, the very early Prep Baseball Report Missouri 2026 rankings. Taking a look at some players that are here. I think some kids that are going to make some impacts for their high schools. Whether it be this year or the years to come. So it's always interesting to have that conversation. And as always, joined by Matt Shadow, Midland Baseball. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Good. You?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
Yep, it's that time. And the resident guru, we were asked, who was Scott Ewell. We had Coach Ewell on. Yeah, he says, how do you get the guru tag?
Yeah.
Tell him to go back and watch all the shows, and then he'll realize how he got the guru tag.
Exactly. I said, well, Kevin gave it to himself. No, I
that would have been even better.
We're making up stories now. But Kevin Moeller with Prep Baseball Report. Kevin, you do a great job with these kids, and really enjoy having you, man. How you doing?
Doing great. Great to be talking baseball when it's not baseball weather.
Yes, indeed. It is nice, isn't it? So let's jump into this. We were talking before we started, Kevin. A lot of these kids, this is very early. These are freshmen. And I think it's always funny when you see the pictures. The kid is like, $150 soaking wet, if that much sometimes. And right. You see the pictures from their freshmen, their first one to when they're a senior with the PBRs they go through. It's really kind of fun to watch that growth, isn't it?
The photos, the best part about the photos for me is the hair, the difference in the hair from their freshman year to the senior year, and how unprofessional it starts to how professional it looks by the time they're done. Because they take the photo more serious, obviously, when they get older, because they realize that it means more. But the younger ones, you look at, some of these guys, like from the years past, and you go back and you look at some of their photos, and you're going, oh my gosh, I remember that. Like, I remember when you walked in and you looked like that.
Do you ever talk to him about those photo pics, Kevin, or you just take it?
I hear about it some. The kids will make fun of each other. Occasionally something will get crossed up on the website and an outdated photo will be on their profile. And and you can also click around and see their old ones. There's some gems on there for sure.
I agree with you. The hair, some of the hair is just like...
Correct. Yeah, the hair, or just see how little and skinny they are.
Right. And you got to remember, as Matt's kind of alluding to, this is usually their very first time they've ever done, a showcase or something like this. So they just don't know how quite to act or to proceed, and that's the beauty of dealing with guys this young. And quickly changes, though. Sometimes you miss some of that as they age, some of the innocence and pureness of the attitudes in game at the younger levels.
It's fun. We have on the list here for Missouri Class 2026, you got 15 kids. So, Kevin, when you're starting this process, it's 2026. These are incoming freshmen. How do you approach this at this point?
Yeah. First, this is just a very initial list, and I think we talked about this before the show starts. This will look significantly different in a year. There's plenty of kids we don't know about yet, but these are the guys that we have seen, that we have knowledge of. Some have been to events, some have not been to events. The number one guy in the state has not been to something yet, but we've laid eyes on him. So this is just a little initial list. A lot of these guys are committed to 4-year schools already, believe it or not. And then there is, these kids will have a shot to make their varsity team. Now, a lot of making the varsity team as a freshman mainly has to do with where you go to high school, right? Like, if you go to, I'll pick Francis Howell or CBC or Liberty in Kansas City. That's going to be a really hard baseball team to make it for any freshman, no matter how good you are. You go to, one of the smaller schools, a 1, a 2, a 3A school, it increases your odds of being on the varsity team. So it's not just, hey, I made the varsity team, so I'm ranked, but these guys will have a chance to create an impact for their high school teams.
So you're looking at an Andon Hyde, even maybe that the young man Cooper Schrum up there have a better opportunity at making their squads varsity.
Well, yes, and some of these guys, we saw this with Leo Humbert, Francis Howell. He did make the varsity team and was really good at Francis Howell. So it can happen, and I think some of these kids will make their varsity team at a big school. I'm looking at a Nolan System, a Brennan Pyle, Caden Throneberry. I'm not speaking for their coaches. This will have to play out. I'm sure that coaches don't know and no one knows, but there's potential that those type of kids, they have that type of talent to be able to stick on a varsity roster. So we'll see. It's kind of like that debate, though, with hey, so-and-so should be our backup catcher for the Cardinals. Well, if we do that, then he's playing behind Yachty and we're stunting his growth. We'll let him be the starter down in AAA as opposed to being the guy that plays 40 games for the Cardinals. So coaches have to weigh that out too. If you bring a freshman up, he better well play. Otherwise, it's really not, good for that player's development.
I would say the 2020, like any freshman, 2026 is because it's what we're discussing. I think it's easier for a position guy to play varsity as a freshman than it is a pitcher, because it's really hard to ask a 15-year-old kid to pitch against 17, 18-year-olds, not just one game, but I'm talking about consistently and be on that rotation. And I'm not saying that the freshman doesn't have good stuff. It's just the grind of getting through lineups multiple times against kids that are 4 years older than you. Where a position guy, you can, you'll get your subpar arms that you face, and you can still play defense.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'll be shocked if any of the arms actually go to varsity, because for one, are they going to get the innings that they need, like Kevin was saying, to continually play? But can they also get through a season without just getting destroyed every other game?
That's a big point. That's the point. And Matt, I want to ask you this too, because you deal with this a lot. You're looking at these things on a regular basis. You see these here, and Kevin alluded to this: Tennessee, Missouri, Arkansas, Missouri, Louisville. These kids are have committed verbally. What's your take on that, man?
I'll be shocked if all of them end up at this school they're committed to right now.
And why is that? What's the deal here, and what are we looking at when we see these power?
All right, here's the elephant in the room. Here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Let's take Louisville because they're not in our state, so I don't really piss anybody off. Louisville's going to have, what is it, Kevin? 11.5 scholarships total. Isn't that what it is?
11.7.
It's 11.7.
Yes.
Okay, so they have 11.7 scholarships. So say you're only losing 4 kids, but you end up to graduate, but you'll lose a couple to the draft, whatever. So they've got room to bring in 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say money-wise, they technically have room to bring in 6 kids. Well, they have 18 kids committed for that class. Somebody's going to get slashed. It happens every year. It's the nature of the beast. It is what it is. Also, the game's changed so much for college where if Louisville sees a kid that's committed to a mid-major, before they wouldn't touch him. Now, and I'm just using Louisville as an example. I'm not saying they do this. Everybody freaking does it, so don't bash me on this one. They will go after that kid, 100%. I mean, you're not going to that school until you sit down and you sign the piece of paper, which is November of your senior year. I think it's November. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 of these kids are committed to Mizzou. If Mizzou only has 6 spots and they have 16 kids that they verbally committed, some of them are going to Mizzou, which we just talked about a month or 2 ago, where some of these kids are decommitting or getting slashed, and then they go to different schools. Committing this early, to me, personally, means absolutely nothing. You have to still go through the grind of getting better. You've got to still prove that you belong, because now, out of the 16 kids, you need to be one of the 6 that they actually agree to take.
So you're still competing for 100%, that spot, right?
I think you even have to work even harder once you verbally commit, because now there's more pressure on you to actually sustain that level to be at that school. Where you take let's take Dylan Curtis. He's number 3 on the list. I know Dylan's dad, Joe, very well. Played baseball with him. Dylan is a good arm. He's going to be a good arm. He's projects well. He doesn't necessarily have to verbally commit in the next 2 years, because he's a pitcher. So if he gets to where he needs to get to, everyone's going to want him no matter what. So if I'm Louisville and I say, okay, the kid that I have out of New York has really fallen off here the last year, or he gets hurt. This Dylan kid's up. I mean, we liked him before anyway. We're really going to go after him and maybe allocate more money to him. I mean, it's a game. You're playing a game, right? But the commitment part of it, I'll be shocked if all of them end up at the schools that they are committed to right now. Cooper Strum probably go to Tennessee because he's the number 1 kid. He's probably going to stay in the top 3, 4, 5 for his career. So he'll probably end up at Tennessee, but Tennessee's going to have 10 dudes just like him that are ranked in the top 3 of every state. So, I mean, I don't mean to be like, hey, Debbie Downer here, but, I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. It's where college baseball is. And I deal with it all the time.
And, Kevin, that points to the next elephant, if you want to put it that way, because I think that's right, is the transfer portal, right?
Yeah, recruiting landscape has changed, and Matt is kind of on to something there. Nowadays, pretty much at the high school level, they're going to take the guys perceived as can't misses, the big time, the Cooper Strums of the world, and they're going to snag those kids. But what's happening is the guys, and the rankings are not 100% perfect. I'm always the first to admit it. But let's just say the guys 1 through 25, 1 through 30, as they get older, once they get into that junior and senior class, those guys are pretty much all Division I baseball players. Sometimes Central Missouri or an elite junior college will snag one of those kids. There's different reasons. You'll see a Crowder, a Jeffco, a Sanjak, a Japola grab one of these kids. So there are outliers, but what's happened once we get down to 40, wherever that Division I line is, they stop signing kids now. Whereas before, 4 years ago, you would have seen that list go another 20 to 30 kids. Now they're cutting it off, saving that money, and they're getting those kids out of the transfer portal. So even if a kid ends up at a school, that usually, this is still fluid. Like Matt and I are still learning about this. No one has seen this play all the way through yet. But what is turning into now is a kid starts out at a school, and a good portion of them play a couple years. The ones that do well wind up going to another school, slightly perceived bigger. The ones that maybe don't get on the field or don't perform as well will go to a different school where they might be able to play a little bit more. So it's an interesting landscape, whereas before it would happen rarely. It would be, oh, this kid's super smart. He graduated in 3 years. He has 1 year left, and he's going to be a grad transfer. They were rare. They would happen occasionally, but now this is common practice, isn't it, Matt?
Well, yeah, and if you look at, we're talking about 26, but look at the 25s, 2 of the top 6 kids are going to Tennessee. And I'm sure you could do this in every state of every class, and you're going to see the Trey Schneider, a 24.
Right.
Andrew Dumont, there's 2 more kids going to Tennessee, and that's just our state of Missouri. You're not even talking about when you get into, for one, Tennessee.
Right.
Or you get into,
and they're recruiting into Georgia and,
they're all
Florida,
over. Tennessee's
right?
everywhere. Tennessee is, most schools will stay within their region, right? And if you're in the SEC, you can pretty much recruit out of the Southeast because there's so many good kids. But then you'll get your random kid that'll go to like UCLA or go to Gonzaga or whatever. But going back to the real question is the 2026 class, these kids that are committed, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. There's already 4 Mizzou kids on here.
Right.
And there's a fifth. Jack Smith, Ben Smith's younger brother, is also committed to Missouri in the class. He isn't on our ranking, but
Mizzou
he is committed.
Mizzou has had to change the recruiting platform for themselves, right? Mizzou is in an uphill battle in the SEC. Until the school says, I'm going to allocate a bunch of money to baseball or just sports in general, the school's going to – they can't compete. If LSU's pulling in, $20 million in NIL money and Mizzou's pulling in $100,000, you're not competing. It's impossible, right? If you look at LSU's transfer portal, all the people that literally left to go to LSU for every sport in general,
right?
It's unbelievable.
Right.
So Mizzou's had to change their platform of how they recruit. So how do you change it? You try to get them verbally committed as early as possible, and you get as many as you possibly can. And then you cipher through the ones that are committed to say, I'm going to take you. Is it right? I don't know. Is it wrong? I don't know. But we'll find out.
Yeah,
But it's what they're doing, so that's why you see so many kids committed to Mizzou. And you could go through each class that you have, the 25, 24, and you'll see a ton of Mizzou kids out of the state of Missouri.
Sure.
There isn't room for all of them. This isn't football. You don't have 25 scholarships to where I can say, hey, I can offer a full ride to every kid.
Right.
So, and they've been doing it, and I don't fault them for doing it. They have to do something because they don't have the money that the other SEC schools have.
Well, and I like what you said there. We sit and everybody goes, oh, that's wrong. Right, wrong. It's
until you're in their shoes, you have no idea what they're dealing with.
And Kevin,
Kevin knows because he's been there.
Right. That's what I was going to say. You're on that side of that recruiting side of it. You're trying to compete that becomes a difficult proposition, doesn't it?
Yeah, and people need to realize we're certainly not targeting Tennessee or Mizzou.
No.
Like, this is literally every school, with the exception of obviously your Ivies and some of your private schools don't do this practice. That's a different deal. But at the top level of college baseball, this is what the world we live in, and I don't think there's necessarily bad guys or anything like that involved in this. This is just the reality of what we're dealing with, and it's not a baseball thing. This is everywhere. Missouri's top wide receiver just hit the transfer portal. He'll probably get close to $500,000. The Lovett kid.
Yep.
I don't fault that kid. I root for the Mizzou football. I wish he would stay, but I totally get it, and he might stay. Sometimes Yuri Collins from St. Louis U basketball went in the transfer portal this summer. He came back. I think he probably benefited from hitting the transfer portal for a month or whatever. So
Coastal Carolina lost their number one player, their stick. He's from Florida, and I think he'd been there 2 or 3 years, but he wanted to go. He has basically one more year left. He wanted to go to Florida and play for Florida, just because I'm from Florida. I want to play there. Well, you're hitting 3-hole for us, and you're hitting 20 bombs, and now you're leaving. Thank you.
I think it's interesting, parents, as we're talking, this is what we try. I love this conversation. You guys, I appreciate it and being honest about things. And I think that's what we need to do more. This has nothing to do. I liked what you said, Matt, right, wrong. People go, oh, that's right. No, look, they're competing. These men that have these jobs in these colleges, this is their livelihood. This is what they do for a living. You may or may not like that, but they're competing for players to compete on the field. It's not different in that respect. Am I right about that?
You're 100% correct, and they want the best for the kids, but they are given no choice. There's only
until
really
the
one
genie
way.
goes back in the bottle,
and that ain't going to happen. I don't think.
I think at some point it's going to have to. I think it's getting so. I think
if
it's
I had
so
my pick,
bad.
If I had a choice on how the recruiting process would play out, I would not allow anyone to commit before their junior year. Now, you could get into debate. Maybe it's
right.
July 1 heading into their junior year, or maybe it's September 1. I don't know. But I think and then you sign the kid immediately. As soon as you commit, you can sign them, and then that kid's locked in. Like the Big Ten right now is guaranteeing 4 years of scholarship for their kids. So they've taken that lead to kind of combat this. Now, that's good and bad. It's good for the families. Now you can end up at a school and, you still might not be able to play baseball, but you'll have your scholarship. So that part is good. So there's interesting things, and, there's a lot for every idea. There is certainly a, well, what about this, or what about this workaround? So there's a lot of what ifs and things to iron out in this process.
They've been having, there's been conversations about giving more scholarship money for baseball, about paying more coaches for baseball, and getting rid of the transfer, just to willingly being able to transfer and then not having to sit out a year, and changing what Kevin said, where you can't commit until, but it's not committing, it's you can't necessarily, the recruiting, you can't have anybody on campus under X amount of age. Now, there's ways, every rule that's ever made, there's ways around it, correct?
Right.
But I think at some point the transfer thing's the big one. I think that's the big one. But with this, going back to this crew that we have here, there's, if you think about it, there's 8 kids out of the 15 that are already committed to a Power 5 D1. And some of them probably haven't even turned 15 yet.
Right. Right.
And none of them have played one pitch of varsity baseball yet.
Right. So what they're doing is they're seeing the talent and where are they going to be in 4 years. I want that kid. What if the kid doesn't progress? The school has nothing to lose. So they just dump them.
Go ahead, Kevin.
The one other interesting piece about it is, I think it takes a lot of, the kids don't realize this, but it takes a lot of mental toughness and maturity if you're going to commit, because what these kids are going to find out is as soon as a kid commits, he has a target on his back, especially as a freshman and sophomore. The juniors and seniors, they have the target, but they're a little more secure because they've kind of proven what they are at that point, typically. But every freshman is going to have a bad game, a bad day, and then you get he's not good. He's not really that good. I was better than him. I hit a double off of him, or I struck him out, and the mentality, and then also from within. Oh, I'm going to big school U. I'm committed there. I must be really good. I don't have to work as hard. Well, that kid that isn't on scholarship is now seeing whoever signed or committed at that school and is working his butt off to catch that kid and working twice as hard at times. And you will see kids fly by guys and other kids drop down because of that. So it's an interesting dynamic, and I do not fault these kids for committing whatsoever. I think it can be a good thing if that's where you want to go. But it's almost like once you commit, you better be willing to work twice as hard as you were before you committed, because people are coming for you.
Guys, let's finish this up in this conversation, looking at where these kids are going. We got high school baseball. We talked about I've seen Nolan's system a little bit, Zumwalt West, as you said, Dylan Curtis, Francis Howell. We've got Brendan Pyle at Zumwalt East, GAC. Looks like another pitcher for Raymore Peculiar, Ray Peck. Am I wrong?
Yeah, they don't. They just crank them out there.
Right, it's crazy. CBC, Westminster Christian, Drew Messi, Andon Hyde at Lutheran St. Charles. That's going to really, I think, make that team. They were pretty good last year. That could be interesting.
He will definitely create an impact for them. One thing, just a note on Andon, as I was going through the rankings, and there's a lot of ways to evaluate a player. Andon's exit velocity during BP is about 100 miles per hour. If he didn't improve at all and you just dropped him into a college BP session, his would be higher than a decent amount of the players he's taken BP with in college. Now, that doesn't mean he's ready to hit in college. It certainly doesn't. Doesn't mean he's ready to hit in varsity baseball. But from a strength standpoint, that is a jaw dropper for a freshman in high school to be able to put up those type of physical numbers.
That is pretty impressive. You got now Jake Brett Schneider.
He's probably the most interesting one for me because he's tall. It says he's 6'3", and I bet he's taller than that. So he's one of those kids that he's always been big. He's always been bigger, and he's finally just like sprouting. So when is it all going to come together, right? When is he not going to be a baby giraffe?
When does he meet his potential?
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
And I think he's a kid to look at in maybe a couple years to see where he is. Because there's schools that I think that are going to really look at him based on the potential of where he could go once you should get a 6. You can't teach 6'6", 6'7" if he ends up being that tall. Which heck, he might be 6'5" now, 6'4". So when it all finally molds and comes together, I'll be curious to see what happens with him.
I shout out here, Coach P. I don't think he's ever going to retire. He keeps getting all this talent.
They got a pipeline, and Matt brings up a great point, and it is a challenge on doing the rankings. But you look at Schrum, Curtis, Marriott, Brett Schneider, in Mehrhoff. Those kids are all uber projectable, tall, lean, fairly athletic kids, and are ranked on more or less their pitching. Rocco is a legitimate outfielder as well. But one of those kids, or two or three, hopefully all of them, are going to pop. Like Matt said, we don't know when. Cooper is already in the upper 80s, so he's like out ahead of everyone else right now. But it wouldn't shock me if, another 6'3" skinny kid ends up throwing 95 or 96 that we don't even have on the list. And, Brett Schneider puts 6'3" on his thing. There's a good chance by April the kid's 6'5". Like it all changes so quick. But a couple of these kids will for sure pop. You just don't know. And then I'm not necessarily anyone on this list, but there'll also be some kids that kind of fall by the wayside, that don't pop, that don't blossom, and don't make it. So it's interesting. That's why we try to keep the list pretty tight, but this is kind of gives you an idea of who are somewhat perceived the top guys in this class.
I think it's cool watching this. You look at what you said. You talked about Rocco Marriott, Platte County, won the state title, 5A or Class 5 last year, won the state title. They got this young man come back. Hopefully, I've talked to the coach. Hopefully, we'll get him back, get him on the show coming up before the season and talk to him. But it looks like they're going to have another run in them. And you got talent keep coming back to these programs. And I think that's what's interesting as you see year after year, the talent level at these programs that are consistently at the top. And that's what it boils down to. Yes, you have to have good coaching, but the talent level that keeps rolling through these programs is there for the coaches.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know when you get outside of this area how the districts are set up or where the housing growth is, so to speak.
Sure.
Like Francis Howell's benefiting from like a housing growth in some of their district and some of their area, where you get like a Zumwalt north and east and south. They're all kind of landlocked. West is still benefiting from when, I would say 6 years ago, when it kind of boomed around them, maybe 7 years ago. So those kids are coming through. That's the public school. Now, the private schools are a different ballgame altogether, but I'm actually curious to see, from a local standpoint, where St. Dominic is in about 5 years. Because I think they're going to boom up, and I think a lot more people in St. Charles County are going to start sending their kids there, which then is going to really affect the Wentzville School District and then even part of the Zumwalt School District. Heck, I know it's affecting some of the St. Charles.
I think that's really interesting perspective by Matt. And, I don't like making too out, I don't like to put myself out there too much, but it's not going to shock me in 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 years, whatever, that we look at St. Dominic the same way we look at a Rockhurst, a Vianney, a CBC DeSmet type school from the athletic standpoint, because St. Charles area has exploded. St. Dominic's enrollment is exploding. I think that there's potential that it could turn into that type of high school from an athletic success standpoint.
Yeah, look at even now. The football team made the state finals, right?
Yeah.
But they were, I think, 5A. I think they were one under the top.
Yes, or four even maybe.
Yeah, they were.
4 or 5.
Yes, they were one under.
Okay, so I know a lot of freshmen there now, and then I know freshmen that went to sophomore. They've had some good kids go through, but there's more talent going there now, starting to progress to where I'm curious to see where they end up. And don't be shocked to start to see, maybe even some 26 kids pop on this list that are going there.
Yeah. I like that thought process. I think it's because I live out towards O'Fallon, and Cottleville is building. You go along 364, there's all that housing being built up there in that Cottleville area. So you're talking about how central, whereas, it's a great point. I never thought about it, but Francis Howell North, there's no really place to go, right?
Yeah, a lot of these schools are landlocked, and you get what you get.
It's a great point. I love that. This is going to be interesting, and I know we didn't spend a lot. We don't have just all these metrics like we do on some of the other kids. But I think it's interesting bringing these kids' names into the. They're there. They're setting themselves in motion. Kevin, what do you when you see these kids here? The progression. You'll probably see some of these kids as we move into the new year, though. Correct?
Yeah, I would. I'll certainly see a decent amount of them through the winter, scene heading into high school. And then, you'll obviously see some of them on the field in the springtime. And then really as we get into next summer, that's when we'll start to get a better handle on what we have here in this class. But there certainly appears to be some high-end talent in this 26 class, and it'll be fun to follow them over the next 4 years.
Kevin, this guy, he's over here. He's probably starting to reach guru status, dropping the knowledge today, right?
He brought it today.
I'll leave one thing here.
I'll gladly hand him over the title.
Kevin knows every kid in the most random places. I do not. A lot of these kids I do know. Yeah. And a lot of these kids, they're committed going where they're going. They're good, but it's also projectability, right? So some of these kids may be 5'10", 6'2", with the projectability of being 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". Some of these kids are not.
Right.
And that's the other thing that I would say about the 5'8", the 5'10s. You're probably going to get to 6 foot, maybe 5'10", 5'11", right? Which, if you asked me years ago, I would have said, don't know how it's going to pan out for you because you don't have the size. But then you look back at some of the kids that have been drafted in the top 3, 4, 5 rounds, and they're only 5'10", 6 foot. But the difference is they can move. They can still pack the punch when they swing it, but they can also move. So if you take like a Brendan Pyle, and I'm just going to use him for example because I know he's about 5'10". And I don't think Brendan Pyle projects to be 6'3", 6'4". He's not. I don't think he projects to be that kid. Now, he may end up being that kid.
Right.
But from what I have personally seen, I just don't see that happening. If he can continue to be able to move, be fast, be quick, and be versatile, then I think he is going to be fine. But he has to stay versatile, quick, fast, and athletic. So he's more of, I am going to Mizzou and I play third base. No. You need to be able to play anywhere.
Right.
Kind of like a Tommy Edman type of kid. And I think people are taking more flyers on those type of players when they draft them outside of the 6'7" righty that's chucking 97. Yeah, everyone wants him. But look at Holiday's kid. Went number 1 overall. I've seen him play in person. Now, his dad obviously is, a Major League Baseball player, did very well, made a lot of money. His kids are good. And they're very good. But if you watch them at the 18U age group, he can do a lot of things. He can literally do a lot of things, and he can do them very, very well. But defensively, he can literally go anywhere. Now, granted, he can swing it, but I think these kids need to understand that. Don't get yourself locked at third base or at second base, at shortstop. You have to be on a team where it's like, hey, man, I got 2 D1 shortstops. You got to play outfield to keep your bat in the lineup. Because what's going to happen when you go to Mizzou? They got to hey, I just got this kid from Tennessee who's transferring over.
Where can you play?
Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So
That's
just
a great
it's
point.
it's not, and I want kids to realize this. It's not I need to be 6'5", 6'6". You can be any size, but you have to be able to move if you're not going to be the 6'5", 6'6" dude on the mound or dude that hits bombs at first.
And guys, correct me if I'm wrong. That was the conversation we had with Anna Jansen a couple weeks ago. Am I right?
Yes.
Talking about movement, and and I think that's why he changed it to ace baseball development rather than just pitching.
Was
he was talking
throwing,
about
being able to move your body, right? Correct. So,
moving.
You want baseball players, not a certain position. You want,
and I think
ball players.
And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's really taken a turn on that in the last few years, really. And I think the Major League Baseball has made a turn on that in who they've been drafting the last few years. Because you see that those guys are more beneficial as the role guy for their team. I can go buy an Arenado, right?
And they just spent the $300 and some million
I can go
on
buy
Aaron
a
Judge.
Goldschmidt.
Right.
I can't go buy a Tommy Edman.
I agree.
A
Go ahead,
Vernon
Kevin.
Donovan.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, those guys are becoming very popular in Major League Baseball because of their little Swiss Army knives.
Yes, exactly. But you could
a
see
lot
the
of
guys, if they're drafted in the last few years, have been those type of kids.
Something to think about, guys.
Where there's hope, but that gives hope for the kids that don't have the gene of being 6'6".
No, hey, Nolan Gorman was drafted as a third baseman, one of the top hitters in the country out of high school. He wasn't going to unseat Nolan Arenado. So he had to learn how to play second base and outfield to get into the big leagues. And that guy was as good as there was basically in the high school circuit when he was in high school, and he, was moving. So no matter where you're ranked or whatever they say about you, someday it comes to a head. You better have some versatility to be able to move around the diamond a little bit.
Very good. Great stuff today, guys. Matt, Kevin. Guys, if you're watching, pay attention to what they're saying. These are two gentlemen that are working within the field, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. Right there. There you go. Matt with his Midland baseball program. Kevin, of course, always Prep Baseball Report. He's the director of scouting for the state of Missouri, and he talks and works with, and you guys talk a lot in that respect as well, correct? Because working with...
Yeah, I call Kevin, but he just doesn't answer.
Yes.
Well, it's just Matt.
He's like, oh, Matt's calling me again. God.
Oh, mercy.
Yeah.
Gracious.
No, we talk. Yeah, we talk. Baseball world's a small world. Everybody talks.
Yeah, exactly. And next week will be our last week for the year. We've got the guys from Misha coming on, Kenny Seifert, Doug Fassler coming on the program. We're going to do our annual bid, talking to the guys. I appreciate, it's great that they're willing to come on the show and talk rules and stuff. We love talking to the guys at Misha.
Year 3. We've gone 2 years,
Right.
and they haven't backed out yet.
It's cool.
We got to up the ante.
Love it. It's one of my favorites.
See how uncomfortable we can make them.
They do a great. And Kevin, they did a much better job last year at the state championships, didn't they?
Yes, they did. It was really well run last year. So
kudos to those guys.
Absolutely, tip of the cap.
So much better. Folks, if you like what we're doing, as always, please hit that subscribe button that's right there. Hit that dinger right next to it, because that's what we do around here, right? We hit dingers.
That's right.
I like that. And that will get you all the notifications, bless you, for upcoming episodes, right, of the show. And if you want more information like this, be definitely subscribing. You can also catch the audio podcast on Spotify, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. We do appreciate it. Bless you. Did it again. He just hit the mute button on that one, though.
I figured out that I should hit the mute button.
I love that. But thanks always, really, for the support. Again, next week we got that. Then we'll be off a week, and we'll be back in the beginning of the year. Looking forward to it, as always. Matt, thanks as always, buddy. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Kevin, thanks. And everybody, have a great day in the Lord. All you pitchers, keep throwing strikes. And hitters,
Hit them where they ain't.
it's always good advice. We'll see y'all next time.